For our next upload of gaming garbage to YouTube, we entered the Resident Evil multiverse. Now, for many of us, Resident Evil 2 was our favourite in the franchise, and with good reason. With some of the most iconic locations in the series, atmosphere that was physically palpable, unique weapons, and rich characters with serious depth, it wasn't hard to see why this entry had been so successful. But one of my favourite parts of the game had to be the scenario system. Whilst it hadn't reached its full potential in either game to the point where decisions didn't really matter in the remake at all, leaving Claire with absolutely nothing in the armory locker room back in OG RE2 had left a profound impact on me. That impact was mainly that I hated my A scenario self, but I really liked this idea that decisions we made, enemies we killed or didn't kill, and the items we took had a divine, game-changing impact on the B scenario. So it got me thinking, what if we connected Leon and Claire's stories in truly the most literal way possible? What if we could beat the A and B scenarios in Resident Evil 2 Remake at the same time? Now, some of you may have some questions like, how? Why? Are you okay in the head? Well, firstly, the why is that I'm mentally unwell. The second is the how. But again, making an investment that I will never mentally recover from, with 2 copies of Resident Evil 2 Remake loaded up on 2 separate computers, we can use cutting-edge technology to take a single PlayStation 5 controller and connect it to one PC via Bluetooth and then to another via USB-C. Now, when opening Claire's A scenario on PC1 at the same time as Leon's B scenario on PC2, we had successfully harnessed the power of 2 games under a single stream of consciousness. With hive mind control achieved over both characters, the rules were simple. Both Claire A and Leon B scenarios would be started and played at the same time. To ensure no pausing or inventory abuse could occur, both games would be running constantly, ensuring that both characters would be moving throughout the RPD as if we were there at the same time. Apart from my usual rules, there was one final rule. One that would rule over all others and enrich the aneurysm risk of this challenge back in line with what we're accustomed to on this channel. Now, we all know how much I love permadeath. And despite my unwavering desire to escape it, for this challenge, it felt too perfect. If we truly wanted to believe that Claire and Leon were existing together in this world of survival horror, then it only made sense that if one of them perished, then the other conjoined mind, like Irving's hairline, would also cease to exist. It also added more weight to the decisions and mistakes that we may make throughout this challenge. Being able to just reset checkpoints stole some of the gravity of what was at stake here, but with permadeath now in play, whatever was waiting for our 2 characters out there in the RPD, the consequences were permanent. So to accompany these high stakes, we'd need a pretty killer setup to match. Maybe not that. Today's sponsor, Red Magic, had apparently seen our disgraceful setup for the Modern Warfare 2 video and decided that if we wanted to be making ridiculous challenges, then we could do it in style, and they've hooked me up with their first ever gaming laptop, the Titan 16 Pro. This laptop was a thing of beauty. Packaged inside its beautiful all-black design with fully customizable RGB, it boasts an i9 processor, 16GB of the finest DDR5 RAM, and an RTX 4060, helping us to enjoy Raccoon City in all of its beauty. Lucky for us, the Titan 16 also comes with a huge port selection as well, meaning we could connect our PS5 controller via one of the free USB 3.2 ports or via Bluetooth. Unlike this godforsaken mess. Yeah, thanks Tim Apple. Considering the mental torture we were about to put ourselves through, this piece of hardware was more than capable of supporting us. So with Claire A ready to go on the Titan 16 and Leon B waiting on my main desktop, all that was left was to start Resident Evil's version of Fight Club.
That's right.
Now, many hardships await us in this challenge, but really the most painful one was me using a controller. As many of you will be aware, I am a native mouse and keyboard warrior, so using a controller had converted an already suspicious aim into the gaming equivalent of watching a toddler try to walk. Please, controller gamers, try and be gentle with me. It's my first time. With my obvious excuses disguised as a disclaimer out of the way, both character scenarios were now underway. The first obvious change is that Claire A and Leon B have 2 very different starting locations. Claire begins by entering a petrol station that looked as though the bacteria in here had eaten all the food poisoning, whereas Leon instead arrives immediately at the RPD. Despite instantly not making any sense from a story perspective, our first problem rears its ugly head. What was happening in Claire's game was vastly different than what was happening in Leon's. Straight away, Leon's early arrival at the RPD throws him straight into the action, whilst Claire gets eased into watching members of the public get converted into beef jerky. This instantly highlighted that we'd need to meticulously plan our way through the game to ensure that both players weren't fighting for their lives at the same time. One way we could achieve that safety was by utilising cutscenes to our advantage. For example, after Claire enters the back of the petrol station to immediately lose her appetite, I quickly skip her cutscene and pick up the red bolt cutters with Leon, which in turn starts the helicopter cutscene with his variant of Claire. With Leon now occupied, my full focus can be on getting gas station Claire to safety. Just before Leon busts in and starts blasting in Claire's scenario, we can skip Leon's cutscene over on the B scenario, meaning that as Claire enters her own intro sequence, we now had complete control over Leon again to safely navigate him into the RPD. Confusing, I know, and whilst I appreciate this is convoluted, complex, and probably insane, stick with me here. With permadeath, these moments were key to making it through this challenge alive. With the main menu constantly calling out to us like the ex who desperately wanted us back, planning ahead for upcoming cutscenes like this would ensure we maximised our progress with the opposing scenario, which could be the difference between keeping this single life that we shared alive, or not. So with Claire in her safe space for the next 6 or so minutes, Leon grabs his kit and enters the RPD, looking to collect the fuse from the East Wing break room to open the shutters to the main hall. Cutting through the East office, we grabbed the valve handle, but whilst the main hall for Claire operated as a sort of mini save room for Leon, it was basically hell. So with Claire fast approaching Raccoon City, we head back to drop off some items at the box and move Claire out of the city to the safety of the RPD. As Claire enters a series of cutscenes, we maximise our time with Leon to begin thinning out some of these enemies infesting the main hall and the East Wing. Having a clear RPD would be an investment in our future, although we wouldn't be able to clear everything out. Now, luckily, we didn't have problems like that with the Titan 16 Pro. This thing's durable, sleek design packed a 16-inch 2.5K high-resolution display, which with 240Hz made the entire challenge silky smooth, and also was ironically better than my own monitor. With both players now somewhat successfully moved into the RPD, our objective now shifts to moving over to the West Wing, specifically the 3rd floor, to grab the spade key sitting on this desk. With Claire now rendezvousing with Marvin, Leon begins his walk through the liquor-infested hallway on the West Wing to reach that key. With the bolt cutters already in Leon's possession, he can also collect the C4 straight away, take what we can find from the adjoining offices, sadly also giving Claire an aneurysm in the main hall, before shooting some guy stealing out the vending machine, because even in an apocalypse, crime doesn't pay. But Leon's clearance of the zombies in the West Wing presented another one of our main problems with this challenge, which was inventory crossover. With our inventories and quick slots completely mirrored, Leon and Claire could both pull out a weapon at the same time, and if I didn't realise and started shooting with one character, we would be inadvertently shooting with the other. And in a world where bullets were money, this wouldn't be economically viable. But simply unequipping weapons or using items also wasn't straightforward anymore either. With our inventories linked, discarding an obsolete item in A scenario could cause B scenario to discard their entire stack of ammo if the slots overlapped. We risked burning through heals, discarding items we needed, or wasting precious ammo if we didn't micromanage our inventory slots properly. To start, we'd have to keep Claire's guns away from the same slots as Leon's. We'd need to put heals in slots that weren't in use by the other player or overlapped with key items, and so on. And one way that we could make that inventory management easier was forcing one player's inventory to open without the other. We had a number of options to help achieve this. We could use storage chests, interact with documents, or use cutscenes. We just had to remember what items went where. Which, for the most disorganised gamer on Earth, there was more chance of a female police officer falling from the sky than me doing that.
Son of a bitch.
With Claire now reaching the dark room, she presses up to the spade key up on the 3rd floor before returning to talk with Marvin, which allows Leon to do the same. Marvin says to Claire that he had something to show her. Jesus Christ, Marvin, this has taken ages. Luckily, we didn't have to worry about Marvin's Windows 95 load times with our laptop. With an i9 powering the Titan 16 Pro, we had 24 cores and 32 threads, supported by 16GB of DDR5 5600MHz RAM, meaning we could load things like the CCTV footage of A scenario Leon arriving over on the East Wing at lightning fast speeds, whereas on Leon's scenario, Marvin's laptop had taken so long to load, he'd literally died. But with both players now in possession of the spade key, we can move over to the East Wing and collect the armory keycard and the red jewel from the scepter in the art room. Despite Leon apparently struggling to get into the art room, our two protagonists now had a new objective: retrieval of the 3 medallions located around the RPD that would be used to open up the secret underground bunker to exit RPD-1. So whilst Claire was enjoying her cutscene discussing the challenges of aviation flying in an apocalypse, Leon from B scenario arrived at the West Wing to find more than he'd bargained for. Yeah, this was going to be a problem. While safety was now a banned commodity in Raccoon City, Mr. X's untimely arrival in the B scenario provided a large fish-shaped problem for Leon. For Claire, she didn't have to worry about Mr. X until she extinguished the helicopter, but for Leon and his heavily infested liquor hallways, Mr. X's footsteps were a stark reminder of how fragile this challenge really was. With my little TikTok brain's ability to focus being tested, we can drop back into the STARS office, which thankfully enforced a strict no fedora entrance policy. With Mr. X unable to open the door, Leon could collect the battery to make his homemade IED, gather some much-needed supplies and the Magnum in relative peace before realizing that Claire had made questionable decisions on her path to trying to collect the red valve handle. As Claire's necklace continued to hold on for dear life, Leon was left to just anxiously read a letter he'd found from her brother. But miraculously, through divine intervention, Claire somehow slips out of the East Wing office death trap with the challenge still alive and the red valve in pocket, ready to head over to the West Wing. Leon cautiously exits the STARS office as Claire heads around to collect the C4, both rendezvousing at the armory to use their keycards to retrieve the shotgun and grenade launcher respectively. With a considerable boost to our firepower, Claire's investigation of the STARS office allows Leon to collect 2 of the 3 medallions and proactively move the bookcase for later. Okay, or maybe not. With DMX now in hot pursuit, Leon loops around and puts all the medallions in place, whilst Claire awkwardly tries to get through to the maiden medallion herself. Despite an unlikely challenge, with Claire eventually successfully in possession of all 3 medallions, both players now arrive in the underground passages beneath the station to face our first boss fight. Claire stops to have a chat with Marvin about how his laptop was somehow still loading that CCTV footage before both players headed down into the depths below the police station. Now, there was a reason that Leon and Claire largely didn't do the same thing together. I tried at various points throughout this challenge to try and sync up their locations and movements, but to say it was impossible to maintain was an understatement. Any moment that we took damage, got stuck on walls or objects, we'd immediately lose that synchronization. But even with this enormous red flag, my brain rot had put forward an idea. If we couldn't keep A and B scenarios mirrored, maybe we could beat Birkin at the same time as each other. Well, despite being an obviously idiotic idea, it was the perfect boss to try on, as Birkin 1 can be sent to the sky in a matter of seconds. For those unaware, the development team in charge of Resident Evil 2 Remake's knife had decided to balance its limited durability by making it a literal lightsaber, shipping it out as one of the strongest items in the game. The knife's damage output is now directly tied to your in-game FPS, so the more FPS you can get, the more frames the knife will have to do damage through an enemy. For Claire, with the Titan 16's RTX 4060, not only did we have the graphics cranked up to max to provide you with the silkiest smooth visuals for this challenge, but with the laptop's performance maximized using their inbuilt software, we still achieved plenty of FPS to make the knife strap more than viable for a scenario. So arriving at Birkin at the same time with our knives drawn out, despite some slight positional awkwardness, we complete a practically identical fight, with Claire sending Birkin into the abyss first in just 18 seconds. With Birkin now defeated ×2, Leon's cutscene with Ada provides Claire with enough time to mop up her arena items, after which Leon watches Ben get his head crushed for wearing shoes without socks, which, personally for me, the punishment fitted the crime. What are those? With Ben's head turned into one of those weird squeezy toys, both characters had now inherited their newest objective, the car park keycard. Whilst Leon and Claire had slightly different locations for this objective, they both required the same items, these 2 electrical components to unlock their respective doors. As Claire was getting slapped about by irons and forced to bleed in her own blood, Leon moved over to the kennels to grab the diamond key, restore power to the car park, and collect the first electrical component. Claire, with her fresh black eye, only has the diamond key to grab from the morgue here. The first of her electrical components is hidden upstairs, but this key allows her to unlock the lift room and access Irons' office back into the RPD. With my focus obviously waning as I forget about this liquor that rugby tackles Claire to within an inch of her life, we arrive moments later at Jeffrey Dahmer's bedroom. As Claire moves in to collect the heart key, Leon begins decongesting his freshly congested corridor back in RPD2 as Claire opens up her airways with her grenade launcher. With Claire now 2 eyebrows down, it was a quick reminder that this challenge still required vigilance. For the rest of RPD2, our hero's final destination is the same place, the clock tower up on the 3rd floor where the 2nd unit was being stored. To get access to the 3rd floor, we'd need to lower this bookcase down using the jack, which for both players can be accessed via different doors over on the west wing. First stop for Leon is to hit the roof as Claire grabs the heart key and unlocks Irons' office door. Leon's massive piece of rear cake bends literal steel as Claire fights her way through to the large cog and her first electrical unit. Both players now need to turn the water on to extinguish the helicopter parked illegally inside the police station corridor. The water valve is located in the same spot for both players, but for Leon, fighting through the two zombies here gives him access to the janitor's closet and the club key, Leon's equivalent of the heart key, whilst for Claire, it's blocked off. Claire's questionable zombie extermination techniques aside, her extinguishing of the helicopter brings Mr. X into her timeline to now ruin her day as much as Leon's. But with speed on our side, we dive back into the RPD as Leon gets stuck inside the janitor's closet. But as we took a shortcut through the main office, the previous laser focus on playing two scenarios at the same time was starting to crack. I'd done this several times now, but keeping track of enemies and specifically their changes across the two campaigns was scrambling my brain. I didn't always remember who was where and what was who, but with the lickers now taken out on Claire's scenario, it saves her a Mr. X-shaped headache, but retained a future migraine for Leon. With access to the records room, Claire now had the jack handle to lower the library bookcases, but with Mr. X still showing complete disregard for the social distancing rules in this current pandemic, it was making life difficult. With Leon beginning the same journey, his door to the jack was located in the narrow west hallway. You know, the one full of lickers. Well, with Mr. X sufficiently lost, Leon had grabbed the jack but faced a complicated route back through to the save room. With those two shots echoing through the hallways of the RPD, our pale halitosis warrior is sufficiently aroused to U-turn immediately back to the West Wing and chase us through the conference room. Unfortunately, our attempts to walk through the lickers here to the safety of the dark room are cucked at the last minute when we're forced to run in what was a lose-lose situation. Despite the love tap, we arrive spiritually, if not in reality, in the same save room as Claire, as Leon applies an ice pack to the liquor-sized gash in his arsehole before starting his way up to the 3rd floor, albeit with our 7-foot Klingon still dragging behind us. Leon makes it to the clock tower first with no resistance, whereas Claire, on the other hand, was entering a perpetual Max Payne nightmare sequence. Unable to lose Raccoon City's hide-and-seek world champ, we're forced instead to lure him 4 miles across town to get the peace and quiet Claire needed to complete her work in the library. With Claire finally rendezvousing at the clock tower, both teams now had access to the tools needed to retrieve the car park keycard. But before that, we had one final task to complete. One that I'd been dreading this entire time. After the first one, the novelty had immediately worn off, and I could hear Mr. X laughing at me outside the save room as my apparent inability to remember basic number sequences continued to kill me slowly from the inside. Despite my performance with these puzzles probably being a red flag to my doctor that I had severe learning difficulties, my eventual completion 3.5 hours later felt worth it, as we could now raid the armory of its remaining goods. Mr. X's patience had apparently been sufficiently drained, however, as he immediately catches up to Leon on his way over to the East Wing basement staircase and immediately punched Claire in the face as soon as she left the armory. With Claire quickly using the mirror over in the East Wing's interrogation room to check her fresh black eyes, she collects the jewelry box so she can access the MAC-10, but a ripple sent directly into Mr. X's face as Claire left the interrogation room had inadvertently sent a ripple across time into Leon's universe. Somehow, Mr. X had returned and forced Leon into the forbidden West Wing corridor. With no choice but to boldly dive headfirst into the hallway of death, we immediately alert the lickers, smashing through the records door at the very last moment. With anatomically realistic Michael Myers still not taking no for an answer, we remove his fedora by force, thinking that it may be the source of his power, but all it did was buy us precious seconds to escape. Precious seconds that were worthless. With Leon's return journey to the car park being less than ideal, consistently going from bad to worse, we end up getting cornered in the break room hallway on the East Wing. Whilst Leon was fighting his demons, Claire collected her new MAC-10 as well as the parking keycard from Irons' office. With Irons giving her a quick call, we used that cutscene to escape the save room with Leon and battle our way down to collect our own keycard. With the entire prison population and Mr. X sentenced to death, Ada commits vehicular homicide and sparks some thought-provoking ideas about how listening works.
Maybe. After I hear it.
Okay, yeah, fuck me, right? Whilst Leon goes through this cutscene, we had already made headway into Sherry's cameo with Claire, which was an easy win for Leon as she has no weaponry and was sufficiently contained inside Irons' sufficiently inappropriate orphanage. With Sherry converting Irons into Harvey Two-Face, we used that cutscene to move Leon up to outside Kendo's. For now, however, we had to focus on Sherry. One wrong move here and Irons would assault a literal child and it would be game over, so we put all our focus into dodging through the play area. As Irons runs in to conduct extremely poor eye care on an acid bed, we move Leon up to debate the virtues of murdering a zombified child in front of their father. With Leon still in his cutscene with Kendo and Ada, Sherry can grab the chief's keys and head downstairs to watch Irons receive a heavy load. I should probably call her, actually. Noting Capcom's obsession with alien deep-throating, Leon uses this opportunity to steal the rest of Kendo's supplies as we get ready to pass the mantle over to Claire again. Still within the RPD, Claire takes the lift down to B1, and using this note she finds in the shooting range, we get the opportunity to do some quick cross-dimensional inventory management. After being told off by the head of the shooting range for not following appropriate gun safety, Mr. X greets Claire to celebrate the car park shutters being lifted as Leon goes through his inventory with Ada. Passing Leon's current location, Claire fights her way through to the orphanage where Leon takes over to trigger his crocodile cutscene sequence. Claire uses this time to collect some items in the orphanage before Leon follows the approved protocol for euthanizing a wild animal. Whilst we waited for Ada to drop the ladder, Claire cleaned up the rest of the orphanage and made her way downstairs. Once Leon was in the lift, Claire gets a quick look at the new Alien Romulus trailer before Leon heads out to meet Annette Birkin, who greets him in the traditional American way. During this time, we'd moved Claire into the basement and met up with Sherry, and just before we entered the lift with Claire, we skip Leon's cutscene and can use the rest of Claire's sequence to give us the perfect start to Ada's section. With Ada making light work of her cameo as Claire gets a medical exam from Annette, who seemed to just glaze over the fact that she'd just shot Leon in the face, we move Ada into the furnace area so we can begin Claire's parallel journey into the sewers. With my perspiration reaching maximum capacity as I'd apparently nearly forgotten how to do Ada's section, the panic was thankfully over, and Ada meets back up with Annette for a nice friendly chat as Claire arrives in the sewers to begin filling out her zombie welcome party. As Claire finds Sherry, Leon regains consciousness in the basement and begins making his way down into the sewers himself, officially starting our newest objective. Whilst entering the sewers starts both A and B protagonists off in completely different sections, the objective remained the same. We now had to collect 3 outstanding chest butt plugs to unlock the main door in order to rescue our respective partners.
Know your fucking place, trash!
Leon begins this section by fighting his way through the waterway overpass and crosses the bridge en route to the monitoring room. Whilst Leon was maneuvering past the G-Adult here, Claire lowers the bridge and heads over to collect the reinforced frame from the safe. With both stories now synced to the same location, both characters finish collecting supplies from the area, as well as the T-bar valve handle. Claire makes Lady Dimitrescu proud by continuing to shoot all of the male workers down here in the dick before moving past her first G-Adult and up to the waterway overpass where Leon had started. With the area sufficiently sterilised, Claire moves up to collect the wildly generically named sewer key whilst Leon leaves in search of that same key. Despite Leon fighting Agent Smith in zombie form, Claire dodges past the G-Adults, blocking her way back up to the overpass, allowing her to start exploring the locked doors as Leon arrives at the lift. With both players clearing zombies out and exploring the secrets hidden behind the filing cabinet, we move both players back into the RPD for one final cleanup. Both players put the RPD dongle inside the weapons cabinet to get themselves the Magnum long barrel and the MAC-10 silencer before heading off to develop the secret film that we'd collected in the sewers. The picture reveals the location of secret weapon parts in Wesker's desk drawer in the STARS office, as well as some ammo for Leon's flamethrower and Claire's spark shot over in the press briefing room. Embarrassingly, my biggest challenge here was trying to fight this single lone zombie with Leon on the first floor as my disgusting inventory management practices had come back to haunt me. Literally, every single item in Leon's inventory was the opposite of synergized in Claire's inventory, and after about 15 minutes of tragic inventory Tetris, the zombie was ushered onto the afterlife as Claire also got an opportunity to pass on her best wishes to Marvin. En route back into the sewers, we'd collected a nice amount of inventory space, meaning that our joint inventories were back to being pretty okay. Space similarly wasn't a problem for the Titan 16 Pro. I'd been recording now for about 5 hours straight with the highest OBS quality settings, and we'd barely even touched the sides of its exceptionally fast 1TB SSD. With Leon now ahead of Claire, he can make a quick start to the G-Adult nesting area to retrieve the other 2 chest plugs, but regrettably receives an almost instant faceful of verbal diarrhea. Now poisoned, we choose to hold off on curing our newly acquired gonorrhea until the return leg, instead collecting the chest plugs, carefully popping any remaining heads in here, and feeling all-powerful as the facilitator of mobile napalm delivery slipped into our fingertips. With the Queen and King plugs in our possession and Leon's body riddled with AIDS, we pop a triple herb on the way back to ensure the inevitable Ebola water that we were going to be forced to drink didn't re-poison us. Claire completes her own journey through to the King and Queen plugs as Leon enjoys watching some home videos back in the maintenance room. With all the items retrieved, we have a small accident with Claire as she falls off the platform straight into the waiting G-Adult's hands, but despite our blood toxicology results showing double poison, taking a careful path back with Claire, we could wait to pop our triple herb, saving it for just before the next boss fight. For Birkin 2, it felt stupid to risk doing this fight together, especially with the hours of progress on the line, but safe strategies and common sense rarely make for entertaining YouTube videos, especially on this channel. With anxiety now being my baseline emotion, the fight began for both players at the same time. I decided that the best way to optimize the start to Birkin 2 was to just endure through the sealing cycle in its entirety. The grenade skip or shooting his hands could result in varying start times for both characters' entry into the main arena, and to be fair, our strategy does deliver. With the only snag being us momentarily leaving Leon behind on this fence, our arrival in the main arena together was a success, but here started the real challenge. Both characters had wildly different starts to this fight. Claire manages to put Birkin down on the ground almost instantly, whereas Leon's Birkin had him on the ropes in the corner of the arena. Birkin's mistake, however, was thinking that I was trapped in this corner with him, when in fact he was the one who was trapped with me. The knife was still as strong as it ever was, and even with Claire missing out on her own damage cycle, Leon's magnum shot stunned Birkin to perfectly set up a chronic OSHA violation, leaving Claire to chalk her own Birkin off her list moments later. With my controller skills now leveled up, both players enter the disposal area to pick up their partner. Claire grabs Sherry as Leon pours some Mountain Dew on the massive hole left in Ada's leg, and we can now finish up the sewers and enter our final area. Next was Umbrella's underground steroid facility, with both players' final objective being to retrieve the secret source from the lab and get out of there. The first part of this collective objective was to reach the greenhouse and retrieve the level 3 keycard from Dr. Kleiner. With Leon skipping his cutscene with Ada, we can make a decent head start before Claire even arrives at Nest, entering the restaurant and collecting some supplies before carrying out some customer service questionnaires on the patrons dining here. As Claire arrives and brings Sherry in, it turns out Leon's conduct here had resulted in several complaints, but with Sherry's cutscene playing out, Leon can tackle what remained unalive but alive over here before collecting the flamethrower valve and the level 2 wristband upgrade. With Leon dropping some stuff off back in reception, Claire heads in to collect the exact same chip and exits the restaurant just as Leon picks up the signal modulator. We get Claire to call her first bridge over on the A scenario, whilst Leon, with the modulator already in hand, doubles back to the bunk beds to retrieve the final inventory pouch. With Leon and Claire heading over their respective bridges, we arrive in the Ivy's domain. Within this garden centre from hell, fire reigned supreme here, but despite both characters having fire-based weapons, only one had an abundance of fuel, which could be an issue. For now though, Leon moves in to burn the first Ivy and collect the dispenser unit. With the codes inputted into the monitor to unlock our 2 lab doors at complete random, and not because I already know them, Leon begins pulling up some more weeds in the greenhouse on his way through to completing the chemical puzzle as Claire was beginning her journey over. With Claire making extra crispy replicas of the Roswell alien en route to creating mustard gas, Leon leaves with part 1 of the dispersal cartridge complete and enters the basement of Nest. Claire joins us moments later, burning the liquors in the lounge area, but a second liquor used tackle, and it was pretty effective. Despite apparently forgetting even the most basic parts of this game, Claire handles the newly awakened zombies in the lounge as Leon enters the lab, but with the modulator he can immediately restore power to B2, whereas Claire would need to head upstairs to collect the modulator herself and return later. Leon passes the time by taking out his own liquor variants in the lounge area and heads in to cool his liquid down using the same process that the Titan 16 Pro uses to cool itself. With 2 4500 RPM fans giving the most efficient airflow possible, it also incorporates 4 high-spec heat pipes and a layer of thermal grease, a very cool non-conductive layer that ensures heat dissipates quickly to help keep the laptop as cool as our new dispersal cartridge. Whilst we waited for the cucumber juice to cool into ibuprofen gel, Claire runs upstairs to grab the modulator, conveniently helping to scare my adult diaper into filling itself up before restoring power to the facility downstairs in the lounge. As Claire cooled down her own canister, Leon moved into the basement save room to loot before heading back upstairs, burning the rest of the Ivies to clear his route back through to the dispersal room. Claire takes the alternative route back to dispersal and both players can now commit chemical warfare in the greenhouse. Claire begins cleaning out her newly spawned Ivies, but halfway through, we run out of flame rounds. I was slightly concerned with all these Ivies playing dead on the floor here. Like the homeless man waiting for me outside the shop after I said I didn't have any cash, I thought they could easily swarm me, and dying at this point in the game would be immensely tragic. But I was careful, considerate, and respected the violence of these walking Venus flytraps, and with the level 3 wristband now in Claire's hands, we could head back off into the main. This was it. This is where the run ended. Leon was like Lenny, blissfully unaware of what was happening around him as Claire was moments away from becoming chlorophyll. But luckily, I'd fought ahead and had a knife on me ready for a moment like this. Luckily, Leon didn't provide me with nearly the same kind of stress on his journey through the greenhouse, and with enough napalm to create Vietnam 2 down here, we collect the purple chip and are out of there before Mr. X had even finished making his dramatic entrance. Claire, in the meantime, is back in reception grabbing her additional inventory pouch, and with both teams now having the right access for West Wing, we can power on the lab unit and sit Claire down to watch a pretty suspect movie.
And they fucking indicted me.
Come here. It'll be all right.
as Leon arrives over at the bioreactor room to begin preparation for the next boss fight. For Birkin 3, so close to the end of this challenge, you better believe that I risked everything for another shot at fighting Birkin at the same time. Common sense, it seemed, was a dying concept around these parts, and despite having a somewhat strange addiction to playing like this, as our two veterans entered the arena, I suddenly felt extreme post-nut clarity wash over me. What the fuck was I doing? I was literally 5 minutes away from the end of the game, and there were so many ways in which this could go wrong. But despite all the possible ways this could have gone wrong, I was in fact doing it. I was hitting the most synchronized movement and shot of the entire challenge. This was it. This is what I'd been trying so hard to achieve. Now, being back to just two randomly flailing characters, the boss fight still goes surprisingly well. With our triple herbs giving the characters in need a substantial boost to their health, which, to be honest, was usually Claire for some reason, we use all the weapons in our arsenal to deal maximum damage to Birkin, and in Leon's case, sometimes the ceiling. With one final rocket-propelled Alka-Seltzer giving Claire another first-place finish in the Birkin World Cup, closing out her run at 2 out of 3 victories, Leon finishes Birkin off with the Magnum, allowing both players to clean up their arena before grabbing the lift upstairs. Now, heading back into the main section of Nest, this next segment requires some finesse. Before Claire arrived to start applying alternative medicine to Sherry's extreme pink eye, we'd need to cut short Leon's emotional moment with Ada. Claire's cutscene here is a long one, lasting about 3.5 minutes, which would give Leon a nice head start en route to his next boss fight, but there's also another reason I did it in this order. Leon's lab countdown timer starts immediately as soon as Ada does her cordless bungee jump downstairs, whereas Claire's doesn't begin until she hits the second lift here. With that in mind, Leon was already well on his way to the emergency lift as Claire arrived to start Sherry's cutscene. With Leon continuing his favourite pastime of being physically abused by Mr. X, Claire was making her way down to the emergency lift, arriving in the comms room as Leon began his final showdown with the King of the Fedoras. I wasn't much a fan of Mr. X's new facelift, but I'd been led to believe that this final boss fight was easy. All you had to do was sit on his left-hand side to reliably dodge his attacks. Well, that was a fucking lie. I'd been under the impression that my controller skills had been improving substantially since the start of this challenge, but with Mr. X now truly giving it to me at an accelerated rate, I'd been instantly humbled. I was in fact still quite shit. Moving like I had bricks in my shoes, Mr. X was issuing out knuckle sandwiches like he was delivering for Uber Eats, but with the equivalent of a pharmacy and enough narcotics that we could 840 blaze it, we can simply heal through his spankings before converting Mr. X into a pool of strawberry milkshake. Claire could then make her way down to that same bridge, giving Sherry some very subtle motivation to hurry up as Leon had to defend himself from the undead's final opportunity at destroying this run. But with them now peacefully taken care of, Leon has a clear route through to the tram, which with this cutscene playing means that we had successfully escaped the lab timer and could now relax momentarily on the B scenario. Rejoining Claire though, she was in the middle of a video call with her universe's version of Leon, who was apparently calling her off a potato and not the 1080p HD front camera that the Titan 16 Pro had. Amateur. With Leon hung up on, Claire grabs the minigun and begins her final boss fight with Birkin 4 as Leon heads in for his own final B scenario test. Now, my only issue with Birkin 5 is that his only attack in this fight is a one-shot insta-kill. Pretty high stakes for being within touching distance of the end credit sequence, so naturally, a sacrifice needed to be made here, and that sacrifice was Claire's happiness. She tanks a huge amount of damage on Leon's behalf as we try to legally taser Birkin in the face whilst trying to burn him at the same time with Leon. With Birkin 5's big eyeballs now exposed, with Leon's leftover rocket launcher, we flush the G-Virus turd down the toilet one final time, freeing Claire from her paralysis to unleash the Redfield bloodline on Birkin 4. And just like that, we had achieved the improbable. With Sherry seemingly getting over the violent murder of her mother by her father almost immediately, the credit sequences began to symbolically roll at almost the exact same time, closing out this challenge with both stories becoming one once more. The end credits music was prophetic. There was indeed two sides to every story, and playing through these two stories at the same time had been enough of a challenge for me. A huge thank you again to Red Magic for sponsoring today's video. The Titan 16 Pro was an absolute dream to play on, and if any of you are in the market for a new gaming laptop, be sure to check out the link in the description or the pinned comment for more info on Red Magic's first ever gaming laptop. And as always, the biggest thank you goes to all of you for watching. For us now, it was a time for reflection on what the hell we were doing with our lives, as well as the challenge. So, can you beat Resident Evil 2 Remake's A and B scenarios at the exact same time? Sure you can, but why in the name of all things holy would you want to?